again, and I want to emphasize again, I have run into with someone very close to me, an unfortunately negative, even a little bit, and hostile, little bit of animosity in there around this issue of Jews. And obviously, given that my mother's a Jew, my father was a black man, and being in black political spaces as long as I have been, the issue of Jews and their relationship to black people comes up all the time. I do often think it is funny that my half brother and sister, my father's first children, shout out to both of them, including my late sister, were and are prominent members within the Nation of Islam. And so I often think that, given all of those specifics, that this is a kind of a funny situation that I'm in. But it's not always funny. And in this most recent conversation, we started having a discussion, and it is often assumed in these discussions, particularly in black political spaces, especially when people are aware that my mother is a Jew, that I'm somehow going to be overtly biased in favor of Jews, and as it was actually said to me in this last discussion, incapable or unwilling to look honestly at the situation. I don't agree with that, but I'm open to it is obviously the case that if we have a blind spot, we don't know it. But over the years, in my entire adulthood, I have put in a good amount of effort in confronting what might be my biases and trying to look honestly at the issue. So again, when we're talking about the position Jews hold in the world, and particularly have held in relationship to black people, I wouldn't consider myself, I don't know, an expert per se, but I have put in, I would like to think, a significant amount of effort and study into that history and that relationship. What I often find is that most people who have opinions on this have not. So on the one hand, and in particular, since I'm talking in this case, and I'm often in these situations in black political spaces, I'm talking about a black person that I'm speaking with. So on the one hand, I don't think black people owe Jews anything, including a particular hard-targeted study of the history of Jews. I do think, however, that it is true that most black people, most Jews, most everyone have not put in requisite study into the history of Jews, or anything else for that matter, and often rely on religious beliefs, popular media, popular narratives, mythologies, personal experience to reach their conclusions, which is not entirely ineffective, but is certainly not scientific and not the best way to reach an objective analysis, which is what I think we should all be endeavoring to in the end. So when this issue came up, and we're having this conversation, and the person I'm talking to is the only thing I want to reveal about this is that they're older than me, that they are black, and that they have an outsized knowledge of political economy, black history, and world affairs. Which is why I admit I was a little bit disappointed, and I shared with him I was disappointed with how our conversation went, because it started in, like most of our conversations are politics, blackness, black world politics, African world politics. And at some point, this person said to me, because of obviously what's going on in the world, how is it that Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel are getting away with what they're getting away with? And the joke started with Netanyahu must have something on world authorities that is allowing him to get away with what he's doing.
And during the few moments that we have left, we want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me, us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Once you are enslaved and once you are in servitude, you have no moral obligation to the people who have enslaved you. In enslaving you, they have freed you of all moral obligation because the nature of their enslavement of you so that you are without humanity, without manhood, without womanhood, without dignity. And anything you do to get those things back is morally justified.
The struggle for survival in the United States is the handling of this never-ending tension between the institutional values of race, gender, and wealth, which give undue and unearned privileges and advantages to some, so that others cannot compete on an equal basis for the resources of this country.
Our people have resisted for 413 years in this wilderness, and they resisted for this generation to carry out what must be done. We cannot fail our ancestors.
There's already so much evidence that we are waking up, beginning to acknowledge the reality. Something stinks.
If we are going to have to fight, we're going to have to struggle, we're going to have to struggle repeatedly to bring it back to peace, because the people that we need to feed, they're a bunch of speculative warmongers, and anyone who says what we need, we've got to fight them, we've got to struggle in the middle of the day.
Everybody knows all the people don't have liberty, all the people don't have freedom, all the people don't have justice, all the people don't have laws. That means none of us do. Take this country and change it. Turn it upside down and put the last first and the first last.
The preservation of history is a primary responsibility of any people.
There is only one answer, only one answer. Revolution. For revolution.
Dig it! Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Yeah. What's up, world? And forgive me out the gate. I don't mean to come in looking this fly. I apologize. But all I did was head on over to Black Liberation Media's store and cop this fly hoodie that's perfect, that arrived right on time for today in the cold, rainy mid-Atlantic here in Maryland. But to you, to the world, what's up, I say, and welcome to I Mix What I Like, live back at a more appropriate time for me, admittedly, earlier. And I also admit that it might get cut a slight bit short because I did not realize that we got half days. Folks are around, I think both daughters will be around. So I might have to, I didn't realize that when this was initially scheduled. So, but to those who are here live, please welcome. Thank you very much. Please do like, share, subscribe, support the platform however you think you can, and put this in your socials, invite others to join you. And if you're interested, I just wanted to have something to get the stream started. So I played a little bit of We Have No Analysis of Jews, the first in what is likely to be a series of discussions for channel members and patrons around the relationship between Black people, primarily in the US, but not exclusively, and European descended Jews, primarily in the US, but not exclusively. And so that was just a little bit of where that discussion originated and why. And so please, if you can, tap in. Otherwise, no harm, no foul, and welcome. But today, what I really wanted to do, because of so many things happening with the summer class and this wonderful revisitation of Dr. Burton's Tip of the Spear and the for me wonderful Fanon Lumumba series on Black Liberation Media that I'm doing, and then finishing up this book chapter on Black capitalism, the narrative around Black capitalism. Some things have piled up around buying power, and I just wanted to have a clearinghouse and get some of them off my chest, just to get some responses some folks have asked me for out there, and have a little bit of fun on this again rainy, cold Tuesday morning here in the Mid-Atlantic. So I don't mean at all, again, to diminish what are the many more serious issues happening out in the world. I know it is not, this is, but admittedly, this is my little bit of a lane, and it is where I think we can still have some positive political intervention, but also a little bit of fun. So that's what, oh, and perfect timing. It's great to see Jared and Millennials Are Killing Capitalism. Thank you for stopping through. And so what I'll do is, since you're here, I'll just skip to this one piece that I have on my run sheet that I wanted to just shout out. And that's in a recent discussion that Jared had with Professor Dylan Rodriguez, who I'm citing in this book chapter, by the way. There was this sort of beautiful moment where I thought, without meaning to, inadvertently, the brilliance of the conversation added depth and some serious political analysis and breadth and depth to the Vernon philosophy. So, as I've been saying for years, the Vernon philosophy is an oversimplification and even a political softening of sorts of a variety of more militant and radical analyses around media and radical politics. And so, one, again, I'm stealing, as I said, the kafia on the chair idea from Dylan. So that was one other thing I'm biting from that show. But I saw this piece, so I want to share this excerpt. The link is already in the show description to the whole discussion, but I just want to share this excerpt here because I love when more politicized, better versions, in fact, of what I'm attempting here are done. So let's start there, and then we can double back. So this is again from Dylan Rodriguez on lexical warfare and counterinsurgency. If you missed that, please out. And this is, I just picking it up here, where well, you'll see it. You don't need just check this part out.
Appreciated. Yeah, actually, as you were talking about the term terrorist, I was thinking about I don't know if people have seen this movie. I'm probably self-snitching that I watch so much bad stuff, but September 5th, which is about the 1972 Munich Olympics. And I think actually, unsurprisingly, has some nefarious narrative and propagandistic purposes within it as well, particularly coming out, in this time when there's a genocide going on in Palestine that's being perpetuated by Israelis. But it's about the incident in which, some Israeli Olympians were basically taken hostage, taken prisoner at the Olympics in Munich in 1972. But there's an interesting scene in the movie that I am kind of fascinated by. And I want to say it's Peter Jennings. It's one of these like very, and obviously this is all dramatized. It's not a documentary or anything like that. But they're trying to figure out what to call the Palestinian militants who have taken these Israeli Olympians hostage. And, they're, I think it's Jennings who's saying like, well, no, they're commandos, or they're like, they're militants, right? And so he's spent more time in the Middle East, right? And it's in a different political context in which, forms of armed struggle have a much broader acceptance, and there's a certain acceptance of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and which wasn't party to these particular this action. But so he's actually in the movie, right? And I have no idea
And my bad, just quickly, but and I'm biased but going through the grad program in journalism at Maryland and working and taking classes with Peter Jennings' literal colleagues and peers, albeit the ones who went to grad school instead of going on camera and I think Jennings stopped at a high school education, in fact, which I think speaks to why he maybe had a slightly higher level of political clarity. But but I am biased by at least being aware of the perspective that I do believe they believed. That is, his peers believed that right or wrong, there is this professional objectivity in journalism that was super important. So there was, for a time and in certain settings, this attempt to defend the profession of journalism with a kind of objectivity that might have been impacting, because I could see some of my former professors trying to make that case, like we're fully for Israel, but come on, we've got to make, I could just see them anyway. So I just throw that in there.
the veracity of any of this, right? But he's in the movie actually kind of advocating them to use a term that retains some political agency for the people who are actually have, taken these Israelis hostage and who have some sort of political agenda around it. And other producers and so on, basically the term terrorist comes out and he's like, no, you can't say that. That's very politically charged. It has this, we can't just use that term. And eventually he gets overruled and the producers decide. And I believe part of the point of showing this is I believe this was the first time that the word terrorist was actually uttered on network television. And it's an interesting thing because, I mean, just that turn and how far away that we are, like at this point there would never be any discussion.
My bad again. It's also Chomsky and Herman's point that it doesn't matter how liberal the newscaster or the journalist is. It's the politics of the executives and the owners and the advertisers that determines the on-air content. So just, yeah.
Discussion within a newsroom when somebody starts to use that term of whether it's acceptable or not. If it's not a state act, if it is a state actor who's committing the act, it's going to be condoned or whatever in some sort of way. Like linguistically, there's going to be some defense of state violence. But if it is a non-state actor, then they're unequivocally going to use that term. And I just say that to say it's an interesting example of how much of a shift that we've had in an understanding of anti-colonial struggle and of an acceptance of a validity of forms of armed struggle to a place now where that is always demonized, and I mean, we see this too with, even in LA, right, with the uprising around ICE that started there, that has proliferated in a lot of ways around the country, that you know that this is all being demonized by all sides, even as the liberals trying to co-opt it is an interesting thing, or trying to defend in some way their sort of state sovereignty or whatever they would call it, from the National Guard or the Marines and federal oversight. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that specific example, not necessarily the movie, because I'm sure you didn't probably waste your time with it, but just that
I've wasted my time on plenty
framing.
Yo, I've wasted my time on plenty of shit. I'm with you. Like, I'm not gonna talk about. I don't want to like endorse any of the shit that I watch, so I'm not even gonna mention. But like, I'll just understand that I'm like, I sit there on that fucking couch with you and shit, right? Like, I think a lot of people that are watching and listening to this probably can relate. But like, I tell you, I think it's important. Let me just back up. Let me say, I think we need to not apologize for that, even though it is kind of embarrassing, right? I actually think we need to actively engage in kind of like a collective critical viewership around some of this shit, because if we can bring our gifted collective analytical sensibilities to this shit, like, it's popular cultural propaganda. All right. So like the way you just broke it down for us is really, it's like, that's a fucking gem, man. Like, you just gifted a bunch of people with tools to bring to screening that particular film or something else that is indispensable, right? So I think we actually need to do that shit. We need to watch this trash, not only because we fucking enjoy it at some level, right? Like, knowing how fucked up it is, but also because, like, inevitably we will bring our critical sensibilities to it and like have a take. Like, if somebody asks you what your fucking take is, it's going to come out the way you just said it. So like, I think we need to popularize that shit, right? We need to popularize that, like the reading practice. We need you, right? We fucking owe you one for that. But this is to say that what you're touching on the other side of kind of like the Zionist and global empires construction of a theater of conquest, warfare, and basically asymmetric violence around the term and concept or lexicon of terrorist. On the other side of that is this compulsory, like, liberal, white multiculturalist sensibility that courses through much of the global north and what used to be called the first world in particular, around a mandate to pacifism, which is something more. I mean, Ward Churchill's book teaches us this in Pacifism as Pathology, right? But it's something significantly more than the compulsory mandate to nonviolence, right? Which is always there too. So in other words, when I say people, I'm talking everything from state officials to kind of people who consider themselves or who others consider to be social movement leaders or so-called thought leaders, influencers, et cetera, et cetera. Like, this whole compendium consortium of people who we assume we're supposed to listen to, right? They will use the term nonviolence, but what they're actually talking about is pacifism. Right? So that's on the other side of the terrorism thing, right? So like, there was a moment, there was a long historical moment in which the notion of nonviolence was understood somewhere, depending on where you were, what the situation was. It was understood somewhere between tactic and strategy, or some blurry line between both, right? But it wasn't necessarily generally understood as ideology, you know what I mean? Or as like a principle. It was like, we're going to do this thing. We're going to approach the struggle with colonialism. We're going to approach the struggle with apartheid this way, using tactics and or strategies of nonviolence, because in our analysis of the situation, we think that it will yield these potential results, maybe create more room to other stuff. And here's the thing, right? Like, something that folks probably who are listening and watching our conversation already know this, but I'll repeat it, which is that for almost that entire archive, historical archive of movements and people and collectives that engaged in strategic tactical forms of nonviolence, it was already understood that it was accompanied by some version of armed guerrilla war.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
All right. So again, the link to the whole discussion is in the show description, but I just thought that whole little piece was very dope. And as Jared was saying in somewhat impromptu, and so the fact that it was off the cuff is even, you know, better in some ways. But one, that's again the point of the Vernon philosophy. It's not meant to be. It's as I was trying to argue, an intellectual boycott that just says, like Dylan was saying, we know we're going to engage some of this stuff. So let's bring a certain sensibility to it. Let's bring a certain reduction of the self-criticism for engaging it. Recognize that we are all in this we're all caught up in the web to a certain extent, and we'll need to bring certain political sensibilities to it, to our peers, to our students, to our family, friends, etc., who will also on some level engage it directly or indirectly. And then as we will be talking a little bit about in the context of buying power, there is this indirect sort of seepage of ideas that it is nice to be able to trace to a certain origin or foundation. Even when you don't deal with a podcast or a movie directly, the ideas are carried into the consciousness and the political behavior of people in our spheres, in our day-to-day lives anyway. So it is to just say, if you can have a take on it that brings a certain politics to it, you know, and then bringing it back to what is actually happening in the context of what they were describing there, but the so-called Middle East and Israel and Palestine and the occupation and all of that, and then how it's narrativized, and then what is really being done here in terms of suppressing a certain militant politics. So I thought that was dope. I just wanted to salute, shout out to Jared and Dylan for that. And now let's take several steps down politically, in terms of analysis and seriousness. We're going to step down a little bit from where we started by going out of order. I've set a standard here that we're so please don't expect that to be the starting point. We're going down. It's all downhill from there. And in a way, to a point that I'm going to get to in a little bit, when Coffeezilla is covering this Bitcoin conference, and inadvertently again, kind of like Jared and Dylan were doing there, inadvertently again, because ultimately this is the point, demonstrating the accuracy of my analysis. Coffeezilla is talking about these Bitcoin pushers, while it's at its highest of heights, are saying that this is somehow a foundation and a launching point. And he's like, how could you be already up here and claiming it's there's somewhere else to go? I'm doing the opposite. All right. So just lower your expectations. But do like, share, subscribe. All right. So, well, you know how it is. My name got called out. So, nope, that's not going to work. So it gets covered here. No, I'm just playing. Not called out negatively. Jessel Noor, who I had the honor of working with at the Real News Network many years ago, who's now working at the Baltimore Beat, and his at minimum equally impressive sister Darna also worked there. Salute to her as well. and really two brilliant young folks. And to the point I was kind of making about Peter Jennings a little bit in the context of left journalism or community journalism, however you want to describe it. Jessel, who I wouldn't say he and I saw eye to eye all the time, but he's a good, honest, talented, quality journalist. So, again, within our political context, that's kind of I think what I say in that political in our political context. Jessel is a Peter Jennings. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that but on that basis, at least, anyway. So I did run into him at a recent rally, and this is apparently some of the coverage that came from that. So to Maryland college students, speaking out about Gaza means more than any potential discipline. In conversations with more than a dozen local students, activists, Baltimore Beat heard that they see their pro-Palestinian advocacy as part of a broader generational fight against injustice. This just came out a couple of days ago. Student dressed in cap and gown raises their fist during pro-Palestine protests at Johns Hopkins University. Obviously, the link is already in the show description. I won't read the entire thing here, but the point being that students and folks are taking advantage of the graduation ceremonies. Like some of your favorite YouTube podcast hosts once upon a time. When I graduated from the mighty Frostburg State University and walked across the stage and held up a sign that said "Free Mumia," and I thought I was, why else walk across the stage and have the handshake and receiving the diploma if you can't have, So salute to that level of, I don't know what you want to call it, demonstration. At graduation ceremonies across Baltimore this spring, students turned their moments of celebration into protest, waving Palestinian flags, denouncing their schools' complicity in Gaza's devastation and risking discipline from their universities and the Trump administration. Now, that is true. At the time I did what I was doing, there was no threat of anything. And at the time, I wouldn't have cared anyway. I would have happily welcomed it. But yeah, so they are facing, it's a different political climate than even when I was doing, for sure. I can't just walk across the stage and not say anything, said August, a University of Maryland School of Social Work graduate, a member of the anti-imperial movement, who asked that their full name be withheld for fear of harassment. I can't just sleep well knowing that my tuition money is complicit in this. August was among students that marked their May 19th commencement ceremony by demanding imperfect of Malcolm X's and Yuri Kuchiyama and who else's birthday was it? It's not Yuri's birthday, was it? Also, now I've got myself confused. Ho Chi Minh's birthday, Lorraine Hansberry's birthday. You know why though? We just had a fascinating discussion, and I look back up at it at Manning Marable's Alive Reinvention, and Yuri Kochiyama is barely mentioned in that book. In all the 600 pages, I think she's got 2 in-text references, and she's, at most is said about her in the book is that she was an OAAU member. Diabolical. Oh, it is, yeah, Yuri too. Good, thanks. Diabolical omission from Marable again in that. But anyway, over a dozen students wore keffiyehs, waved Palestinian flags, covered their hands in blood red dyed water, and signs read "Genocide is not a social work value," and "Disclose, divest from Israel." Resistance has grown since March, when U.S.-backed Israeli blockade choked off food, water, and medicine to Gaza, and public perception is starting to shift with it. An April Pew survey showed a majority of Americans now view Israel unfavorably for the first time in decades. That finding was confirmed by a May University of Maryland poll that found more than a third of Americans, including a majority of Democrats, see Israel's actions in Gaza as war crimes or akin to genocide. Yeah, well. So the Beat was interviewing folks in March. Mahmoud Khalil, a prominent organizer at Columbia and a legal U.S. resident, was detained by ICE. So that was one of many issues raised, as a concern. Both students and faculty have led calls for Baltimore City Council to hold a hearing on the Hopkins Police Department, arguing the force remains unaccountable to communities it is supposed to serve. They argue that university leaders are capitulating to a pressure campaign designed to stifle dissent and academic freedom. Now we get to the good part, finally. My goodness. At Morgan State University, where student protests played a key role in the civil rights movement, Professor Jared Ball sees the pattern repeating. Faculty in Maryland can't unionize, governance keeps shrinking, and corporate and military, that is specifically faculty governance, keeps shrinking, and corporate and military influence keeps growing. Private security is everywhere, yet students still say they don't feel safe. Administrators confine protests to designated spaces and punish anyone who strays. Proof that crackdown on dissent isn't new, just more aggressive, end quote. That's just stunning. It couldn't have been summarized any better if I said it myself. What a fantastic job I did there. But obviously, no offense to the wonderful Morgan State University and all this, if not salary, wonderful health insurance. At Towson University, the movement has only broadened. 1 year after passing a 12-1 divestment resolution, university leaders have rejected calls to divest from Israel as students built an even larger coalition. By the way, just real quick, Morgan does do this. I mean, it's, and I don't know if I said something, I don't remember if I said something to him or if he's just picking up on this or if this is, I'm not sure, but this line here that Morgan State University played a key role in the civil rights movement. Morgan loves to remind people of that protesters from Morgan State participated in sit-ins on Route 40 and helped desegregate Route 40 and stuff like that, and they'll even welcome back before she passed. Oh wow. Now I've just gone blank. I mean, my point is that they'll happily, want to remind of that tradition while aggressively walking away from what would be akin to those struggles today. So it's part of a broader HBCU propaganda, really, and promotional thing, because again, it's well, quite the liberal counterinsurgent rebranding of political struggle. And then you get to say again, once upon a time, this was great, but now we're all good now. Now we just want to help everybody get good jobs and, support the Democratic Party and the Black press. Students from area schools shared food and strategies for continued action, including University of Maryland College Park, where in April students voted to divest from Israel and other countries that fuel human rights abuses, joining Towson and the University of Maryland Baltimore County, where student bodies approved divestment resolutions that last year. The event, organized by Baltimore Artists Against Apartheid, raised more than $3,600 for Palestinian families. So, right on. So salute to Jessel and to the Baltimore Beat for the coverage and to all the students and faculty protesting. Right on. Now, this one, just the link is also in the show description. I just saw this morning and let's see, how do you get the reader view? You can't get a reader view on this one because I really don't like this. But all right, let me just So I'll just do it this way then. I forgot I had given this interview, so it was interesting to see this come out, or that I saw that I got the alert for it this morning. There we go. Now I can show it this way. Beyond recording studios, musicians turned business moguls. And I remember, and I can't even remember when the interview took place a couple weeks ago. Megan Sales, Afro writer. But yeah, it just came out yesterday, the story. But I was asked, it was something about why, well, you'll see. For generations, Black musicians have shaped American culture and entertainment, yet many have struggled to profit from their talent alone. So the point of the article is that Black musicians have to move beyond the traditional music industry to find a way to make some money. So of course, because you know what I mean, this is just, this is the level and lane I'm in. I'm not going to be the keynote, I'm not going to be the main one. I'm not going to be the headline scholar interviewed. You got to go when you can reach him. You got to go get the big dogs. And so she went and reached out to MarkAnthonyNeal, who said it's very difficult for artists to actually make money selling music. They've always had to do other things too, said MarkAnthonyNeal, an author and African-American studies professor at Duke University and host of Left of Black, that is quite happy to talk around and dismissively about your boy, but not invite me on to have a conversation. It's this odd. It's odd. We've paddled together, sat in person next to one another and had a cordial time of it. You know what I'm saying? But if folks remember that wonderful discussion with Professor Aria Halliday, where they were pew 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 taking shots. But all right, you know what I'm saying? But so I'm just adding that to his bio there. He goes on, historically, it was taking your act on the road because artists make more money touring than selling records. Now it's become establishing a brand as a musician and expanding that brand to cover your business interests in order to make a living. And that's right, that 360 deal. They get you with that 360 deal. You can't just go on the road anymore. So he's quoted here as, and I wonder what the full discussion was like, because the way he's that is AnthonyNeal is just described, summarized here, is talking about these examples from the 30s and the late 50s of Thomas Dorsey and Sam Cooke as being somewhat moguls in the industry is interesting and somewhat, I think, a little bit falsely nostalgic. This idea that the father of gospel music was doing something kind of independent back in the day, and that Sam Cooke was somehow successful in starting his own publishing company, which some have argued was behind why he got himself killed. But again, it almost comes across like AnthonyNeal is suggesting that it was, like, again, it was all good just a week ago, and then things went bad when I definitely disagree with him when he's quoted here as saying that it's changing, with that it's even getting better. Like, okay, here he says, because they've seen so many stories of Black artists who, for whatever reason, weren't savvy enough on the business side and found themselves in their 50s and 60s unable to make a living and sustain themselves. There's a younger generation of artists that've been so much more savvy, particularly with hip hop, said Neal. I think every artist who gets involved in the business is very conscious that they can't simply make a living by selling records or streaming music. Yeah, but so I definitely disagreed with this here. So first of all, and again, I don't know how the full conversation went, and I know they often don't, get reported accurately, but as he's reported speaking here, this idea that black musicians or anyone else are broke because they're not savvy with their business is, I think, unfair. Because again, it puts it into a situation as if it's back into that description, as though people are poor because of their own decision making, and that there were actual options for them, and that we're, in other words, we don't see many examples of people who start their career off making great deals for themselves and having magical celebrity-driven careers. That's not how it works. We even end up seeing the biggest celebrities having to fight tooth and nail, Prince, Michael Jackson, even Taylor Swift, for control over their art. And they're at the tippity top. And in cases like Prince, after they've already ascended to the highest of heights of the industry. So you're not going to come in with some level of business savvy, and I guess we could wait and see generationally how hip hoppers of today fare. But this idea that we're about to see a whole bunch of retirees chilling, when again, as we're going to get to in my point, there is no safety net for them. I don't know. So I don't, and an artist may be more aware today than before that they have to do more than sell records to make music. I don't know that that's true. I think, again, as even Neal points out in his own previous comment, artists have always understood that they would have to go on tour beyond selling records to make money. So now artists know that they have to go on to podcasts and sell products and, become liquor brands and all that kind of stuff, But at the end of the day, only a handful of them do well, and only a handful of them have sustained careers. So I don't, now we get to the good part. Oh wait, no. First, we just see the picture. We got a little bit more of Neal here. Artists have to be savvy enough to know how to control the narrative of what is from the wellspring of Black cultural production, as opposed to what is just being bought and sold, said Neal. Too many people now, including some young artists, treat Black culture as a commodity. They have to think it through, that because once it becomes commercial, it also becomes disposable. So again, as more musicians find success in the business world, Neal cautioned that artists should not reduce the culture they create to a mere commercial product. I mean, you can't, there is no not doing that, though. There is no not doing that if you're going to have a commercial career. There is no not reducing it to commodity. There is no protecting the culture. Anyway, so though the growing trend of musicians becoming business moguls may be seen as progress, some see it as a response to deeper structural problems within the industry. The reason Black musicians look to expand into other areas of business is because they have already been exploited and thoroughly limited within the highly monopolized and politicized environments of the music industry, said Jared Ball, professor of communication and Africana studies at Morgan State University. Then they go off and try to make up for it by extending their brand and making as much as they can off of it. So I do remember that was one of the points I was trying to make, that of course they're trying to go in other areas because they've already been exploited. They can't make any more money in the music industry, so they have to go somewhere else. Like, it's not, what I was really trying to convey was, it's not like there's this new level of genius that today's artists have attained. It is just a continuation of what has always been the case. But Ball warned that even as Black artists branch out into business to gain more control over their careers and earnings, they often find themselves running up against the same structural barriers that limited them in the music industry. I'm glad she included that. He advocated for redistributing the profits of the music industry to better compensate the artists who create its value. This could include providing musicians with unions, healthcare, and retirement benefits. Sort of what I was saying. Obviously you're not provided with a union, but that you create that they should be provided with but artists should unionize is what I was saying. But definitely there should be healthcare and retirement benefits. Even down to the so-called one-hit wonder, these artists are helping to produce billions of dollars for what is ultimately 2 to 3 companies on the ownership side of the music industry and 2 to 3 companies on the distribution side, said Ball. Instead of worrying about each individual, we should be advocating that labor be unionized, organized, and better paid, protected, and respected for the wealth that it produces. Not bad. Not bad. I'm not mad at that. I turn up well in that. I feel accurately quoted and reflected in that. What's up, Poncho? Absolutely. Cancel celebrity culture. Exactly. So, yeah, that beautiful health insurance for sure. And I have on some level of authority from a source that I think is well situated to know this, who asked that they be kept anonymous, but we protect our sources around here with the kind of journalism we do here, and I mix what I like and have you liked and shared and but they said that Black artists in the movie industry, at least, so you could think that there might be some crossover to the music, have been absolutely told to act right around a defense of Israel, or there's going to be consequences and repercussions. So, all right. So enough of the let's get to the stuff that I've been asked to review. Enough of the self-aggrandizement and back padding. But I definitely, well, I am curious how interviews turn out. So I was glad to be reminded. I had actually forgotten about that interview, and to be paired with the illustrious MarkAnthonyNeal, who, despite the shots taken at me, I mean, he has produced a lot of really good work, I think, on the history of Black music. I've admittedly never fully agreed with his political frame or analysis of it, but in terms of some important history and writing, certainly. And he wrote Habermas in the Hood, which I remember was I made good use of that in connecting communication studies and Jürgen Habermas to hip hop studies, in other words, communication and hip hop studies in the public sphere and all of that stuff. So yeah, but for sure, he's still hating. But anyway, all right. So let's get to some of this. Let's get to some of this buying power stuff, and again, ever on the decline from where we started politically, analytically, and in terms of seriousness. So don't, again, warnings. It's ever downward. So let's see. Black-owned Miel Organics sold to Procter and Gamble. That was I know that was in 2023, right. And now there's a class action lawsuit. Okay,
Miel Organics is getting sued, and just like that, the backlash begins. Class action, false advertising, scalp burns, hair loss, and the same community that made it a success now feels betrayed. But this isn't just about hair oil. It's about what happens when Black-owned businesses scale and lose their say in what happens next. Because here's the reality. Most founders can build something, sell it and walk away, no pressure. no questions. But when you're black, you don't just build a brand, you carry a legacy, and the burden comes with it. You're expected to stay small, stay visible, stay perfect.
No. First of all, wait. First of all, that's the point. When you scale, black companies can't keep up. First of all, most companies can't keep up. Most companies, white, black, or otherwise, want to be bought out or are forced in most cases when up against the big dogs to sell out because they can't scale up. They don't have the investment. They don't have the ability to manufacture, produce, distribute, promote, advertise, et cetera, and so forth. So they have to. What she's talking about at this point with this, what is expected of these black companies to stay small and this, that, and the third, that's part of the black capitalist propaganda that allows black businesses to play off of their communities for support, protection from criticism, et cetera, and so forth, while they marshal up as much resources and wealth as they can before selling out to Procter & Gamble, who, by the way, is one of the biggest advertising buyers in the world, so on the back end end up buying through their advertising all of the content that many black and other media outlets end up dependent upon and end up narrowing their content to appease. So it's yeah, all right.
Perfect. So when a black founder makes a big exit, the celebration feels split. Success on one side and suspicion on the other. And they're forced to ask the hard questions. Will the product stay the same? Will the community still be centered? Or does the brand forget who built it? Let's be real. We deserve billion-pound valuations. We deserve exits without compromise. But here's the tension.
No, I don't agree. I think I disagree with that. Nobody deserves. Why do black businesses deserve billion-dollar valuations? I don't agree with that. That's part of the propaganda she was talking about a minute ago, that in terms of the expectations of these businesses. We should, and this is something that's going to come up later, we should be expecting political movements that redistribute those valuations.
As a founder, you're balancing two promises, one to your community and the other to your investors or the people you're exiting to. The real challenge is delivering both without folding either. And the truth is, some founders don't want to stay in the room. They want out. Clean break, no strings. That's valid too. But for the ones who do care what happens next, there are ways to hold on to your influence. You can negotiate board seats, keep creative control, protect your formulas, add community clauses to the deal. You don't have to do it all, but you can choose to do it differently.
Add community clauses to the deal.
Because real legacy isn't just about building the brand. It's about protecting what it means, even after you sell. Final thing is that
I'm going to show you in a second. That's funny she says that. I'm going to show you in a second from the perspective of those with the real power here, what it means to maintain that image. That's the whole point.
You can leave the business, but you had better leave a blueprint. Let's get involved in the comment section.
All right, so that's wild. All right. So that's okay. Let's just keep it moving. It's gonna only get better from there, I'm sure. Oh man, did I watch this one yet? I don't remember if I've seen this one.
Well, we very much dislike the term black excellence because it's like an undertone of like black elitism and like kind of like operated like in this capitalistic way, that's not in tune to us, like how we move like them. I don't like that. When I do business, I'm not trying to take advantage of nobody. I'm not trying to scam nobody. I'm not trying to get over on nobody. I think business should be done that way. You know what I mean? I think we should both get something out of it. If not, I won't even do it. And people would disagree with that. And I wouldn't.
Well, that's because we turn culture into capitalism and we turn money into a god, right? And we'll do anything for that money. And we justify all actions by at least you get in the bag, right? Not that you did it where it's morally aligned, not that it's aligned with your spirit or your values or nothing. It's just, but they got the bag though. That's justifying our own self-destruction as long as it comes with some capital. So now we can't see our progress, right? Because we keep celebrating things that don't represent our progress. And we celebrate people that have nothing in their plans for our progress.
19 keys, and this is high.
Has anyone ever looked at his website, by the way? I put this in one of the comments on his Instagram. Is it do I have where am I here? Maybe it's in this one. Hold on a second. Let me play this one. This was also sent to me a few times. Let's see.
When I saw that you put up that tweet about black excellence is the scam that replaced black power, I thought it was just a pertinent perspective. I thought the timing was correct. The idea of black excellence, I think, is just rooted in this Western individualism that we've adopted that's ideologically contrary to our natural state as a collective communal people. Is an easy way to conflate individual success with progress for the masses, and those things don't equal each other, right? You know, it's like we got the most black millionaires, the most black billionaires. We're always being told about this $1 trillion spending power that we have. Our median black family wealth as households is declining and is projected to reach $0 by 2050. And already the average white household is at 86 times the amount of wealth as the average black household. And yet we got billionaires, you know. It's like negating the value of that individual growth that has been made. And that's not the case. The case is more so that we can't lose sight of the actual goal.
Not Minister Server in the comments.
Of personal gain. The actual goal is for us as a people to overcome the societal pressures that chain us. And one of us coming up, few of us coming up, doesn't change that.
19 keys.
So I don't know where I put it. I thought it was in that one. Maybe it's in another one. Because in the comments, I was tagged in, or somewhere that was sent to me, and or one of these. There was several of these, and I just was saying, can someone email me with the plan that 19 Keys has? Because all I see when you go to his website are coffee sales or sales for tickets to some event. So I don't see the collective plan. I don't see the anti-capitalism in his analysis either, or his arguments either. I see a lot of, and then before that, remember he was in that now I think now defunct BMO, Black Men Organized, not or something group with investment group with him 500 and EY. So it's like, I don't know where, you know, now to the point about Vic is trying, and to the point about Jaylen Brown is trying, I tend to agree that, and this is sort of the point, that the good intentions, the desires of those protesting the no kings, or the people saying we don't just want black excellence, we don't want something just for a handful of people, I don't want to do business if it's just good for me and not good for us, you know, that goodwill is dissipated through the propaganda, the mythologies around capitalism, business, individual self-promotion of high-level thought leaders and their speaking tours and coffee sales. So again, I keep trying to say, methodologically, despite, you know, the contradictions of a few minutes ago, I'm not judging I'm trying not to judge the intent. It's hard. I don't know what the intent is, but an analysis of the outcomes and the arguments is where I think is where there needs to be some sort of intervention there. So I really don't know. I don't know. I would need to know more about what those conversations, where they led to, and before I could say much more about. But just from what I've seen, and I put that's what my point in the comment that I left. I was saying, please email me if anybody can tell me more about, because all I'm seeing are the contradictions. But I am definitely biased. So, all right, a few more here. Let's see. So this was another one that showed up in my buying power Google alert. Brand amnesia is expensive. Why customers remember when you forget your values. And this is again going to my point about when the sister was talking a minute ago, why it's important for Black-owned businesses to maintain the image of their Blackness and their connection to community. Well, advertisers are very clear on that. That's a core feature of advertising and of the buying power mythology, et cetera, and so forth. And by the way, this is going to come up later too, in terms of these claims around who are the biggest consumers. Now, there's nothing is cited in this story. I did look for it in this story by Beth Karawan from middle of May of this year. And it's basically a lesson in maintaining your brand. The cost of forgetting, emotional loyalty, and economic loss. Why does that matter? These communities collectively control more than $6 trillion in projected buying power by 2026. Black consumers, 2.1. Hispanics, 2.8. The LGBTQIA plus 1.4. So don't forget them and being emotionally loyal. Hey, she says later on, Target did, scale back DEI and they got punished. Now, please check Saturdays with Renee from a couple weeks ago. I got to put the link in the show description for that one, where she, breaks down why it's a little bit more complicated than that in terms of why Target is losing its money. But I'm going to come back to a point on that in a little bit too. But she's, Beth here is saying, hey, instead, now she doesn't add this part, but she's saying, do what Al Sharpton said to do. Go to Costco. Don't go to Target, because Costco remembers. And therefore, because Costco doesn't treat values as a marketing play, they're baked into how the company operates. When 98% of stockholders recently rejected a proposal to soften its DEI commitments, the board responded, our commitment to an enterprise rooted in respect and inclusion is appropriate and necessary. The result, consistent customer loyalty, high employee retention, and an operating model that proves values are good business. Now, what does that mean for Black folks? Not a damn thing. But it means that the marketing, the maintenance of the brand and brand loyalty is good for business, good for white-owned and other business. That's the point. So it's always good to see, and be reminded, from the folks themselves. All right. Always good to be reminded. Costco bowls smell like fish. Honestly, I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even tell you. Let's see. Let's keep it going. This is just a whole bunch of these lately. Again, any fantasy I once had that my intervention was gonna be meaningful, just gone. Building digital community, how online resources are reshaping African American identity and wellness in 2025. In 2025, the digital world isn't just a place to scroll, it's a lifeline, a cultural archive, a wellness toolkit rolled into one. For African American communities, online platforms have evolved into powerful African American resource hubs, preserving heritage, fostering connection, and addressing systemic health disparities. Word? With 2.1 trillion in buying power and 52% of Black Americans under 35 driving digital trends, The fusion of technology and tradition is rewriting what it means to thrive. This transformation isn't just about hashtags or viral moments. It's about building ecosystems where identity and wellness intersect in ways that feel authentic, inclusive, and unapologetically Black. Now, of course, boys and girls, and however others may be identifying, we know, and we heard the
message.
In that, we caught the message in that, in ways that feel authentic. That's it. That's it. Feel authentic. Oh my goodness. Now, by the way, if please, I'm not bearing the lead. There is nothing in here that explains how there's any meaningful addressing of systemic health disparities. It's a bunch of hey, I have a website that's going to make you feel, you're going to feel better. Oh, and just when I thought I missed the citation, there it is. Nielsen's Cheryl Grace. This isn't a moment, it's a movement. That's where they're getting it. That's where they're getting it. As Black buying power nears 2.1 trillion, companies are finally noticing, investing in everything from diabetes-friendly meal kits to VR reenactments of historical Black Wall Streets. Oh my God. Where tech meets tradition. Hey, you can go to communityroots.org, and Emerging Vital is a vital connector. Designed as a one-stop for African Americans resources site, aggregates historical archives, mental health tools, and community event calendars. Hey, it'll show you where you can get free blood pressure monitors. This is hey, that's how they're closing these healthcare gaps. Don't get universal healthcare. Don't even do what as I pointed out, our very liberal NCRC report argued. Don't even argue for universal health care on the basis that it will help corporations and small Black businesses who won't have to cover the health care of their employees anymore. No. You can go to a website and find your free blood pressure and diabetes checkups. Because you need them, because you're still going to have high blood pressure and diabetes being Black in this country. There is no end to the trauma, but we have a website, and these companies are noticing that 2.1 trillion in buying power they can gobble up with VR reenactments of historical Black Wall Streets. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. No doubt, if you don't laugh, you will cry. I'm saying this is all. I mean, this is not. I mean, but let's keep going. That is wild. And Cheryl Grace, oh my goodness. I got to go back. I don't even remember anymore because they recycle these Black women at Nielsen who run this scam for so many. But remember, the woman that I cited, the Black woman I cited in my book, ended up suing Nielsen for their own anti-Black discriminatory practices. Got to go back and find that again. Was that Cheryl? Was this part of her buyout that Cheryl comes back and does this nonsense again? Or did they find a new Black woman to come back and do it? All right, let's keep going. Hey, U.S. Black travelers now represent a $145 billion market. This is, again, the point about the value of maintaining the importance of symbolic blackness. Because to whom do black travelers represent $145 billion as a market? Hey, 76% of black travelers plan to vacation within the United States in 2025. Wow, 76, only 24% of black travelers leave the country? There was a brother that used to go to our meetings in DC all the time, and his one comment always at the end of meetings always included, every black person must have a passport. You must have a passport and a destination outside of these boundaries. Among them, 79% say that feeling safe and welcomed is a top priority when choosing a destination. Destinations that celebrate black culture, support black-owned businesses, and offer rich cultural experiences rank highest among black travelers' preferred places to visit. This is important. Again, this line here, supporting black-owned businesses. Once again, the data is clear. Black people do travel, and our buying power does impact communities, said Jason Dunn, CEO of the National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals. This should no longer be a question, but a fact and a speaking point in all boardrooms, particularly in this climate of indecisiveness. Hey, and in case you're wondering, who is Jason Dunn and what is the National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals? This is what you can expect. This is high-level journalism here. I mix what I like, and this is what you can expect in these buying power excavations. This high quality. The National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals. I had never in my life heard of this group before reading that article. They're having a big-time conference, the 42nd annual, to be specific, in November in Portland, I think. All right. When you hit this About Us section, if we take a spin on over there, the National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals, founded in 1983, is a nonprofit organization dedicated primarily to the training needs of Black meeting professionals and all humans who support excellence. This is why this stuff is super important, and we can applaud that. It is the purpose of the NCBMP to be the preeminent organization in educating Black association executives, meeting professionals, and humans that believe in excellence in all aspects of the meeting planning profession. This will help maximize a greater return on the meeting dollar investment for their respective organizations and affect positive change in the hospitality industry and become a voice in the hospitality industry on issues that affect the events community. So, absolutely, it is important to the Black business, meeting, hospitality, travel industry that the Black that's that $145 billion market, or yeah, that is supported by these Black professionals. This is super. Really, my point, though, of course, is that this is what I'm saying. This is all part of the mythology around the Black capitalist, the Black business entrepreneurial community, and its supposed overall benefit and value to the rest of the Black community. It is, in fact, when am I supposed to get to that part? Oh, coming up. Okay, yeah. Anyway. Folks, please do like, share, subscribe. Thanks for joining me this morning, this afternoon. Hope all are doing relatively well. We've got a little bit more to go here. Who the F is thinking about black businesses when they're traveling outside of this racist hellscape of a country? Event planners and AV professionals. Okay, thank you. That's yeah, I'm a meeting professional. Sometimes I feel like I'm a meeting professional. All the meetings we get dragged to, for sure. You got to pay a membership fee for that designation. Oh, yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay. Morning still in the shy, of course. And that's what's most important here. Thank you, Pancho. So good morning to you. Shout out to the meeting professionals for sure. But no honorary members in the meeting professional society. All right, let's just keep going. I got to, yeah, as I said, a few of these had been piling up. And so let's check out this next one here about, well, I labeled it "No Empires." What was I talking about here?
And that's why I was trying to say, dog, when Kanye West was going through his little rant and saying what he was saying, I understood him when he was going against Nike and all these big other companies, is because we are the biggest buyers of these companies, but yet no power, right? Meaning, because we don't have no manufacturers. We don't have no shoe factories. We don't have nothing for no black person to come and build an empire with. We're continually buying from other people. And like I say, there's only two type of people in the world. It's buyers and makers and buyers.
Consumers and producers.
Yeah, without us blacks, man, this shit'll fall.
Right.
Cause we buy everything.
Right.
You get, cause and that's why I was trying to.
So, okay, I understand why my note said no empires, because I'm saying we shouldn't want empires. Like, that's why I'm like, Wakanda must fall. No empires, no kings, no queens. Like that whole no kings march. I mean them for African kings and queens too. No more monarchies. But no, we shouldn't want empires. And this whole thing about, the other thing is, I actually, in some way, like the point that the way they say, look, there's only consumers and owners, something like that, and that's my point. And there's always going to be fewer owners than there are consumers. So let's just value the consumer more. Without the consumer, the producer and owner can't extract and exploit, et cetera, and so forth. So the argument shouldn't be, let's become owners and producers and heads of empire. Let's get rid of the empire and create value, so to speak, or pun intended, for the consumer. So the wealth that's produced in the exchange, when I buy this fly new I Mix What I Like hoodie from the Black Liberation Media store, the value that's created in that, not only, well, in this case, it's supporting a cooperative effort, but the value from that should go back to me as much as everybody else. For instance, in the form of universal health care, $30 an hour minimum, wages. Let's get, whatever, 52 weeks a year, 25 weeks of paid vacation a year for every worker. Just hire more people and all of us get more time off and make more money. So, it's like, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's get wild with it. Let's get wild with it. There's so much being made here. Let's salute to the, all right, what's this one here? Salute to the consumer. Salute to the customer. Stop denigrating the customer. 100 Mexicans versus 100 blacks.
Instead of this motherfucking 100 Mexicans versus 100 blacks, who will win? How about we do this? 100 Mexicans and 100 blacks open up some businesses together. Bet you won't share this one. We do that, it's over. It's over. Money comes in, hate goes away. Mike Will out.
Hey, so I'm with him. He's on the right track. Why fight each other? But this is where that black capitalist mythology comes in. This is where that capitalist mythology comes in. That the business is the solution. So his solution wasn't, let's all of our communities unionize together. Let's all of our communities form new versions of Black and brown liberation movements, Chicano liberation movements. Let's become socialists. Let's become radical anti-colonial militants. No, he's saying his solution is let's form some businesses. And we're going to have 100 poor Mexican businesses and 100 poor Black businesses serving tens of thousands of poor Mexicans and tens of thousands of poor Black folks. And we're going to get the money coming in. And what's going to happen? What? And then we're going to scale up and get Procter & Gamble to buy us out. And then we're going to be really caked up and free. That's sort of my point, though. That good sentiment, the goodwill that's inherent in that argument, is dissipated into some nonsense through this mythology about this economy and what can be done with it, and that the reason people are poor is because they don't have their businesses together. Like, it's true that I do think you could argue that people are beefing with each other because of are encouraged to beef with each other because of economic, conditions, material conditions. I think we could get with that, basic Marxist analysis. But a little bit. I'd say we're going to have a little bit of fun. Got to have a little bit of fun with it. I think. But yeah, I mean, all right, let's keep going. We got some more. Oh man, I needed to have a clearinghouse. What happened?
Calculation
here?
of how we could end poverty.
Oh,
and your calculation of how we could end poverty in this country was how much money?
So if you take everyone below the poverty line and lift them above it, that's about $177 billion a year. And it's a super rough estimate, but it gives us a sense of what we're talking about when we're talking about ending poverty, because that's so utterly attainable for us, right? That's less than 1% of our GDP.
Right.
So a study came out that showed that if the top 1% of Americans just paid all the taxes they owed.
Just the ones they owed?
Just the ones they owed, and not got taxed at a higher rate, just paid what they owed, we would net about $175 billion a year. So we could just about close the poverty gap.
Just with and without levying other taxes, just collecting what we need.
Right. I mean, yeah, right. Yeah.
Because when you say that, I just go, no.
Right.
That can't be.
Right.
But be.
Right.
That's insane.
So shout out to Jon Stewart and what's that guy's name again? Because I actually looked up his book. What's that guy's name again? Why isn't it in this? It's not mentioned in this. Wait a minute. All right. Anyway, I did look up this guy. I actually got the Kindle book, read a couple pages of it, and read enough to see that, for instance, he says he doesn't like the word redistribution. So he argues we shouldn't use the word redistribution because he's not an anti-capitalist. He doesn't want to be confused with socialism and all that other kind of stuff. Is it Poverty in America by Matthew Desmond? Is that him? I think that's him. Yeah, that's him. In 2020, the gap separating, I'll just show you this. I didn't read too much of it. I won't, In 2020, the gap separating everyone in America below the poverty line and the poverty line itself amounted to 177 billion. The IRS now estimates that the United States loses more than $1 trillion a year in unpaid taxes. Income inequality has endowed rich families with more political power, which they have used to campaign for lower taxes, which in turn boosts their economic and political power even more than in an undemocratic, unjust cycle. We need to interrupt that cycle, which is why I also support increasing the top marginal tax rate and the corporate tax rate. Here we go. Redistribution. I hate the word. It distracts and triggers, causing us to instinctively fly to our respective political corners and regurgitate the same old talking points. But by the way, his talking points are not new either. I'm not calling for redistribution. I'm calling for the rich to pay their taxes. I'm calling for rebalancing of our social safety net. So his arguments are not new either. He's just saying, I don't want to call it redistribution because obviously people will associate that with, and I just want to boost the corporate tax rate and all that other kind of stuff. Okay, I ain't fine. But the same problem exists. Despite being on Jon Stewart, the narrative is that that's not the way to go, and that argument can't even get brought up. And in the context of Black political spaces, the argument is completely sidelined by this mythology around business being a solution and financial literacy being a solution. So sure, were the rich to pay their taxes? Were taxes spent more appropriately? Yeah, everything, but that goes back even to what the authors of The Big Myth talked about in the corporate reconquering, in their language, of America post the Second World War, and a return to the entire market fundamental mythology. And in terms of Black people being told this Black capitalist mythology, that all those narratives have to be challenged, politically organized around or out of existence, and so on, before we can get there. All right. So definitely I got asked to look at this one too. Let's just keep it going a little bit. So many.
Admitted that their sales were down almost 4% last quarter. And they specifically admitted that it was due in part to your boycotts over its rollback of some DEI policies. So why now zero in on Dollar General?
First, I've got to take note that this boycott against Target is the most successful boycott by Black people in 70 years since the Montgomery bus boycott. They lost $12 billion in valuation. Their stock tumbled from $145 a share to $93 a share. The CEO's salary was cut by 43%. And so I just wanted to put an asterisk of what happens when our community mobilizes and stays focused. We have canceled Target with 13 weeks in and decided we shouldn't have to grovel for respect when we give $12 million a day.
So all right, even if we take that as perfectly accurate and we ignore what Renee showed about the already dropping stock value and whatever. Okay. The most successful boycott in 70 years got Black people what? What? The only people who were, as Renee showed, positively impacted, so-called, by DEI were the board of directors, who had a 3% increase in presence because Black workers were not hired at any higher rate while Target was defending DEI. So Black people got what for it? Especially when they're being told the extent of the action is vote for a Democrat and go shop somewhere else. Where Sharpton is literally telling people to go to Costco. So what is the so that's one thing. Then it's a regurgitation of a very old tactic. And again, salute to, among others, John Bracey, the late great John Bracey, for this book, Black Nationalism in America, where you can read, again, this is not even a revolution. This is a more or less left of center, non-revolutionary Ralph Bunche writing about all of this in 1940. Right? Yeah. The New Negro Alliance. We must organize our purchasing power. And what does Bunche show in this essay? Won't go through it too much, but essentially just the point that I was making, that Renee pointed out in terms of Target. When you reduce the labor struggle, as is Bunche's argument then, and I would argue now, to a strictly race-based analysis or argument, a strictly race-based argument or approach that targets the hiring, pun intended, of Black workers, it only benefits the Black middle class and up. DEI only benefited 3% increase of Black members on the board of directors of Target. Black workers at Target went down, lost employment during the reign of DEI, as Renee showed on her show a couple weeks ago. Bunche is saying the same thing from 1940. Practically all of the jobs it has gotten, that is this push for hire Black people, don't buy where you can't work. Despite its protestations to the contrary, it is clear that the New Negro Alliance pursues a narrowly racial policy, one that has no orientation in terms of labor unity or organization, and one that definitely opposes Negro against white workers. Its membership is middle class, and so is its ideology. Its efforts are devoted almost entirely to obtaining white-collar jobs for Negroes, and this is amply demonstrated by the claims made as to its successes. Practically all of the jobs it has gotten Negroes have been white-collar jobs, and these mainly clerks. It emphasizes the support of Negro business and says very little about the importance of organized labor to the Negro worker. Most of us are always going to be workers, and that should be the primary concern, not business owners with the promise that they're going to hire workers, Black workers, which is never true. And then if they do, those workers will have what rights and protection? Their Blackness and solidarity with the Black owners? Come on now. Come on now. The don't buy where you can't work or buy where you can work movements are a logical corollary to the Negro business philosophy. This philosophy of this movement is narrowly racial. If successful, it could only result in a vicious cycle of job displacement, since it creates no new jobs but only struggles to displace white workers, and since Negro communities do not offer sufficient economic activity to absorb even a small number of Negroes now employed in white industry. Is that how it's written? Because it then ends in a period. Its appeal has been primarily in the interest of the Negro white collar worker. If successful, it could only result in a vicious cycle of job displacement, since it creates no new jobs but only struggles to displace white workers. And since Negro communities do not offer sufficient economic activity to absorb even a small number of the Negroes now employed in white industry, Yeah, I think it meant to be a comma there. Its appeal has been primarily to the interest of the Negro white collar worker. It's a philosophy which, like that of Negro business, only offers racialism with no significant hope for the mass of Negro population. So it's the same thing that is being done today. All of this around we're all black, black solidarity, care about DEI and all that is only done to benefit a handful of black business people, black bougie people, just like the buying power reports are supported by the black meeting professionals and all of this other kind of stuff. And the black worker is left. Now, again, I get it. This is not, certainly I'm not making some blind call for solidarity with white racist workers and all this other stuff. I understand the historical, the struggles in unions around race, et cetera, and so forth. But to at minimum deny black workers the argument around unionizing and joining the labor movement, even in terms of black-led or black-only worker formations, is diabolical. I'm going to come back to that. All right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take a quick break by starting this next segment with, right? Am I going to do it that way? Yeah, it's already 12:30. Let's get to this. So, because I need to take a quick break. So I'm going to set this up because I do want to play, because obviously, again, the importance here is Coffeezilla is showing that I'm correct. All right. That's always what's most important here at I Mix What I Like. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, support the platform. Then head over to Black Liberation Media and get you one of these fly hoodies, mugs. Don't forget the bucket hats. You know what I mean? You can overdo it. I can't wait for the sun to come back out. All right, check this out. I'm going to play just a couple minutes of this. The link to the whole thing is in the show description. And honestly, if you don't follow Coffeezilla at all, you really are doing yourself a disservice. Very good reporting on these issues, even though, as he says here, this is not meant to be an anti-Bitcoin argument. It really is. But I'll show you in a second. If you don't catch it off the break on your own, you'll see momentarily why, in so many ways, this just proves my point. And so let me start this and I'll be right back.
How the government has fully embraced. Today I want to talk about Bitcoin, how the government has fully embraced it. And what's ironic is that the Bitcoin people, who they started as anti-government, anti-central control, have now started to fully embrace it. And you've got a bunch of billionaires and oligarchs that sort of control Bitcoin's community in a weird way. And I want to flag it. I want to flag the rise of Bitcoin strategic reserves, which are not strategies, and the weird direction this is going. It's just ironic because of what Bitcoin sort of started out as a way to get around the government, get around censorship, things like that. But now that you have government starting to accumulate this stuff, you've got the increase of rich and powerful people starting to accumulate this stuff. The question is, what is it doing anymore? Is it even trying to achieve the same goals, or is it just about the price going up? So I first started thinking about this when I saw Bitcoin 2025. That's the annual conference where a lot of these enthusiasts get together. And I really saw a huge uptick in the number of politicians who suddenly showed up saying, they're true believers. They've always believed in the technology. They're all in on Bitcoin. And they say, look, it's going to the moon.
Where do you see Bitcoin in 2 years and in 5 years?
I think I sort of alluded to it earlier, but I think we're going to the moon, guys. I mean, it's going to be awesome. Just stay in, stay strong. we're like I said, we're in it from all these different ways, whether it's Truth Social, whether it's what we're doing with American Bitcoin on the mining side, World Liberty Financial, on the DeFi platform stuff. I mean, we're true believers.
That's right, guys. True believers. They've been true believers for months now. Okay, they're hardcore. Listen, with the obvious focus here of this whole conference was a lot, unfortunately, about price, numbers, to the moon. That's what a lot of this was centered around. It almost stretches the imagination to think of any other industry unironically saying, we're going to the moon. Like, hey, where do you see computer by one of the Winklevoss twins, who you may remember. Immediately, I was greeted by one of the Winklevoss twins, who you may remember as, making billions from Facebook. And they're on stage with David Sachs, who's the crypto czar of the government of the United States. That's who's up to answer some questions. And they sort of have to ask David an important question. This is the crypto czar. What do they ask?
Something about capital gains tax. No. I think it'd be great if the U.S. government started proactively acquiring Bitcoin.
What do you guys think about that?
That's about as big a rise as Fire Gary Gensler getting last summer.
So the question and the big applause break is, hey, can the government pump my bags? It's kind of what it comes down to. I mean, do the people at the conference really care if the American government has a bunch of Bitcoin or not? No, they care.
Phrasing.
Price movement in the upward direction. So it's just such a departure. It's such a strange thing to beg Daddy Warbucks, who you've been saying this entire time you don't need them, you don't need the government, you hate the government. Now, the big applause break, the big thing that the two billionaire twins ask the crypto czar is, can you please buy my internet beans from me? The other strange implication I found weird about this whole thing is you have the Trump sons there as well. They have huge Bitcoin businesses now, a Bitcoin mining business. Then you have Trump Media Group raising $2.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. It's a little strange. The only thing I can relate it to is there's a famous example of Jimmy Carter. He put his peanut farm into a blind trust so he wouldn't enrich himself. But imagine if Jimmy Carter then established a strategic peanut reserve to then pump the price of his farm's peanuts. I mean, I'm not saying that's why the government established a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I'm saying that one effect of having first you buy a bunch of Bitcoin, right? And you get a bunch of Bitcoin.
That's definitely why they invested all that money in both parties during this last election. That was definitely part of the goal businesses. For sure.
And then you just have the government buy a bunch of Bitcoin. You're pumping your own bags with the taxpayer money. That's kind of weird. Now, I have to be clear that David Sachs maintained that the only way the government would buy Bitcoin for this Bitcoin reserve is if they did it in like a revenue neutral way where it wouldn't increase the debt. But I also have to be clear that you still are buying it. This revenue neutral way is just finding money that would have gone somewhere else, could have gone to anything. Like you could have bought NVIDIA stock in a revenue neutral way. You could have bought the S&P 500 in a revenue neutral way. Just funnel it from one thing to another. So this whole thing is more about optics than it really is
invested in black-owned businesses.
Effect. It's just so people won't freak out thinking that taxpayer money is going to buy Bitcoin, even though that's sort of what's going on if you really pay attention.
So if we can convince Howard Lutnick, who's the Commerce Secretary, or Scott Besson, who's the Treasury Secretary, to buy some, and they can figure out how to fund it, without a new tax or without adding to the debt, then maybe find the money from some other program that's not using it, then we could potentially acquire more Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So just to please watch the whole video. It's linked in the show description. But this again, just because I'm only interested in being proven correct yet again, this is David Sachs, who's up here saying, among some other interesting things about the pricing later on in this video that is above my pay grade, but you should check out. He's saying, if we get the government to buy Bitcoin, have a Bitcoin reserve, the fact that we own so much of it and the exchanges it's traded on and the mining operations and whatever, that's going to be great. because again, just especially for as they say, the haters in the back, this has been what I was saying about Snoop for a minute now. And if you remember, Snoop said again when he was asked, why are you doing Trump's crypto thing, he's saying, hey man, it's just 30 for 30. I did 30 years for 30. I did 30 minutes or 30 years. And 30, yeah, I did 30 minutes DJing at the crypto ball for my friend David Sachs. He says, my friend of 15 years, David Sachs. That's your homeboy? So maybe it has been 30 years in the hip hop game and doing things for the culture, but it's been at least 15 years of overt friendship with that dude. So I just thoroughly enjoyed that part. But then of course also as Manny, thank you for pointing that out and recognizing all this stuff about Bitcoin being about Black independence and sovereignty is Hill Harper, my favorite with Hill Harper, and we're going to own all the Satoshis and they're going to have to come through us. They already own it, bro. The Winklevoss twins have been owning it since day one and building to this moment now. By the way, the point I made earlier in the show, I wasn't sure if it came up in the clip I was going to share, but Coffeezilla later makes the point that David Sachs and others in this video at this conference are talking about part of what they're doing is promoting that and encouraging more investment in Bitcoin. Because they're saying this is the time to get in because it's going to the moon. Now, remember, where's Bitcoin? What Bitcoin valued at today? It's over 100,000, right? Value. Yeah, $104,230. If that's not the moon, this was Coffeezilla's point. If that's not the moon, where are you thinking this is going to go? Now, you have to keep telling people it can only go up because how else could you get them to invest and have your value go up? But the reality is, I don't know. But their point is my point is they've already got it all. So the idea that you're now going to buy in and that this is going to be a hedge on the dollar and a way to circumvent government involvement while now running, as Zilla said, back to daddy, to government to come pump your bag.
Phrasing?
Is wild, please. Man, who can I give a couple dollars to? It would literally have to be only a couple dollars to create a fly. That's what I want. Somebody create a fly video of my debates with these Black Bitcoiners. Oh, man. Had me reading their books and all types of stuff. All right, wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. Let me get one more of these to clear out before I get out of here. Because this was another one I got.
Literacy is such a scam. Truly, some of the most disgusting content you see on here. The problem isn't the information itself; it's that it's.
Hold on. Let me get a clean. Wait a minute. How do you get a clean? You can't get it. But financial literacy is a scam.
Literacy is such a scam. Truly, some of the most disgusting content you see on here. The problem isn't the information itself, it's that it's always marketed to the wrong people. Like, financial literacy is not how you make a bunch of money. It's what you do with the money you already have. It's investing. It's how you turn $10,000 into $12,000. If you have a $0...
Who has $10,000? Hold on, he's about to get it. If you have $0,
you need to get a better job. You're not going to invest your way into some money. I feel like the whole concept of financial literacy is a conspiracy to convince poor people that rich people must be smart. and that if you're poor, it's your fault for being poor. I remember seeing this interview with this NBA player, and he was saying, like, you know, I grew up poor, single mother. We didn't have financial literacy. It's like, if you're poor, financial literacy isn't going to help you. You need to stop being poor first. Then if you invest the money, you won't go back to poverty. People love saying that we should teach this stuff in schools. It's like, why? Kids don't have any money to invest. What are they going to do? It's like, no, you need to focus on getting some money first. Then once you get some money, you can open a retirement account. It's not hard. You just fill out a form. Hopefully what I'm saying makes sense. If it's too complicated, I recommend you take my course. Only $900.
Yeah, that was funny. You need to stop being poor first.
Now listen, that's cool.
Oh my goodness. Hey, and plus he's Asian too, so you know it's real. That's sound. So do like other communities do. Do like them Asians do. Now that was perfect. That was perfect. All right, listen, everybody. There's even still more. I didn't even get to everything. Yeah, I didn't even get to everything. So stay tuned. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and you'll be notified when we have the Clearinghouse Part 2, because there's, you know, there's just so much more to this stuff. Right. Haven't you considered not being poor? Just stop being poor. And then buy my $900 course. I'm telling you, that's the 19 keys plan right there. Now, this is for the people. It's for the community. We're not capitalists. We don't do black excellence. We do black power. Now, buy my coffee, sign up for my lectures and my tour, and then you'll get the next wave of secret high-level value conversations. Financial literacy has to be systemic. No, financial literacy is, no. Real financial literacy is political power. We should be teaching people and children how to get political power. You don't need no more financial literacy. All right. Listen, everybody, this has been fun. Thank you all very much for joining me today. Those who will see this later, thank you as well. Please, again, do all the things. Peace only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And I will catch you next time with more.
What did you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy and defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like.